Rev up your engines!
Well, Hyundai owners are now filing a class action suit against Hyundai because their cars burn too much oil. Their engines burn too much oil. Now, this is an extremely large suit covering a whole bunch of their cars. Now, I'm not going to read them off here, but if you want to freeze the screen, here they are. Here's all the different ones that they're being sued for. It affects almost every single engine and model that they made in the last decade, in the last 10 years. As I said, they've made garbage for a long time. They keep saying, oh, they're not bad anymore. They used to be, but now they're better. No, they aren't. They still burn oil because they don't make them right. One of the guys that's involved in the suit says, this is BS. Hyundai isn't that old. It's got like 40,000 miles, and it uses a quart of oil every 1,000 miles. And they just say, oh, that's normal, too bad. And I've had them come to me in Tennessee and in Rhode Island with their Korean-made cars that burn oil, and they're all told the same thing. Oh, well, that's normal. We'll do a test. Oh, that's normal. We're not going to put another engine. Of course they're not going to put another engine. It would cost them a fortune. And it's not like those Toyota Camrys back in 2007, engines that burnt oil, right? Toyota fixed it. Their new ones don't burn oil. No, this is the whole last 10 years. They're all burning oil because they're all made like crap, and they're not going to radically change how they build their cars. They just say, oh, that's normal. Go ahead, drive it that way. It burns oil. It's normal. You don't see the newer Camrys, Corollas burning oil. No, not the Koreans. As I say, if you don't buy one, you won't get stuck in this big mess, so don't buy one. And you don't have to worry about an engine that burns oil. It doesn't matter if you change the oil regularly. They just burn oil because they're not made correctly. I've seen them burn oil when they had 15,000 miles on them, and they've had the oil changed 3 times. Nothing wrong with the oil change. They just aren't made right. Scranner Nick says, my 2000 GMC Savannah 3500 will not start. I'm about ready to send this box truck to the junkyard, but I'll give it one more chance. All of a sudden, it died on the highway. It gave off a little shudder, but then it didn't do anything. I replaced fuel pump, distributor cap, spark plugs, ignition coil. I'm going to give the battery a jump and pray it starts. I hate to break your bubble, but I doubt it's the battery. You said you were going down the highway and it made kind of a shudder. I would assume that it's wrecked the engine. I'm assuming it's probably pretty high mileage considering that it's 22 years old. When an engine gives out, it'll conk, and you try to start it, it kind of shudders and then it gonks out. You probably locked up the engine. What you want to do is watch my video, getting a car running that sat for years. Even though yours didn't sit for years, it's the same process. Get yourself a long extension bar and a socket that goes on the front crank bolt on the bottom where the fan belts are. Try to turn the engine over a couple of turns, a couple complete revolutions. If you can't, the engine's locked up and it's gone bye-bye. That's probably what it is. When engines finally seize, the pistons lock in place or the cams break and lock in place, and then you can't turn the engine over anymore. And if you can't turn it over by hand, don't go any further. You'd need another engine. You want to get rid of it, send it to the junkyard now. Or put another engine in it. My advice, if you ever have an engine lock up like that, don't try to fix it. Just put another engine in. There's too much possibility of internal damage. Over the years, I've had guys bring me cars. It's got to get you fix it. I'll take it apart. Like, there's so many things wrong with this engine. You don't want to fix it. When they lock up and they're high mileage, you get rid of them, put another engine in. At least it's a 5.7 V8. There's billions of them out there. You can find them in junkyards. You can find rebuilt ones. You can even buy brand new long block ones if you want. You could do that if you wanted to. You try turning it, it won't turn. It's locked up. Amarino 96 says my fuel gauge doesn't read correctly. I got a 88C 1500. It doesn't read it. I put in a new pump and gas tank a month ago. All right. Well, so that doesn't read correctly. First thing, you did say you put in a new gas tank. Make sure the gas tank is grounded correctly, because if it's not grounded, then your fuel level sensor won't work because it's got to have positive electricity and negative. That's the ground. Could be you didn't ground it right. Now, you said you put in a new fuel pump. Did you put in a new float too and sensor? If you just put a pump in and not the arm and the fuel sensor, that's just a variable resistor that goes up and down and tells you how much electricity, different levels of electricity go to make the gauge go up and down. If you didn't change that, you should have changed that if you did all that work. Pray it's as simple as the gas tank not being grounded correctly. It often is. If it's not grounded, you'll get weird readings because it's got to get a nice solid ground to keep the electricity flowing. If it's a weak ground, it make the gauge go up and down and not read right. The Colorado kid says, my voltage regulator is failing on my Honda. How can I prevent this from happening in the future? What can cause a voltage regulator to fail. How can I prevent it? All right, well, it's very simple. The alternator and the voltage regulator, which in all modern cars is one piece, charges the battery. You get a weak battery, it's got to overcharge it all the time. It will wear the regulator and alternator out too fast. Say once a year, just have your battery tested. As a mechanic, I can do it with a machine I have. It takes 2 minutes. Or you can even buy a halfway decent one on Amazon for $59 or so and have your own alternator battery tester and do it yourself if you don't trust people. I don't trust people either, so I suppose if I was the mechanic, I'd have one of those to test my own, right? Also, check your battery terminals. Make sure they're tight and not corroded. Once in a while, pull them off. Clean them with those little battery cleaner wire brushes. Put them back on and make them tight. And then spray them with anti-acid spray paint that's made for battery terminal protection. All auto parts stores sell that after you clean them and put them on and then paint them. Don't paint them first and put them on because then they won't work. It'll insulate them. First, you clean them, put them on, then you paint them. And then also check everything else. Make sure the fan belt's on as tight isn't cracked. Make sure that the other wires in the car aren't corroded and then you feel them getting hot because there's corrosion. You got to take the connectors apart, clean them, and put them on. Just keep a clean electrical system and they'll last a long time. But the main thing is the battery. Check that. Weak battery will wear your alternator and regulator out. Vesh says, I got a family of 4. I need a good used city car. I live in Philly. I want small but fun to drive and a family of 4 can fit in it. My 2 strapping sons grew up in a Toyota Corolla 4-door. Was plenty fine, and they're still plenty fine. Or a Honda Civic. They're zippy enough. They're fun to drive around. They're a lot zippier than they were back in the day. Ours wasn't zippy. It was okay, but now they're actually very zippy cars, both the Civics and the Corollas. You're in Philly, get a used one, of course, because, you know, people would bash cars in. Everybody I know from Philly who lived downtown, their cars had bashes because people are just slobs. They'll open the door, run into your car, take off. So don't buy a brand new one and get dinged. You'll get mad. Buy one, a pre-dinged one from Philly, and then go from there. But those are the best for the money now. Fortunately, with all the craziness going on in the country, hyperinflation, coronavirus, all that crazy stuff, the price of cars and used cars, new and used, is sky high. So you're going to pay pretty hefty. So those are the best. They can last forever. 3, 4, 500,000 miles if you take care of them. Clumsy Drops, he says, I'm looking at a 2013 Sequoia Platinum. It's high mileage. Is it worth buying? Okay, it's got 234,000 miles. The guy wants 20 grand. I can see they last a long time, but what do you think? All right, that's a lot of mileage, and that's a lot of money for a lot of mileage. My grandson got an equivalent. He got a Toyota Tundra with the extra bed and everything for $7,500, and it had less mileage than that on it. So to me, that's way too much money. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. What you got to realize is how many miles are you going to put on it? If you're not putting that many miles, it can last for quite some time. But you also have to worry about the future. Right? Those are tremendous gas hogs. And if the price of gas keeps going up, doesn't come down, you're stuck with a vehicle that gets horrible gas mileage in town, especially. I've had customers with me. I said, what do you get in town? They said, we don't know. We're afraid. We love the vehicle, but we put so much gas in, we don't even want to know because it would make us so depressed. They are horrible gas mileage in town. So are you going to be driving it more in the city or the country or more in town? And how many miles? If you're going to put 20, 30,000 miles a year on it, you know, maybe not the best vehicle to buy with that mileage for that kind of money. Dan C says, I ran over a porcupine with front tire and back. The front tire isn't losing air, but has quills in it. Should I take them out? Will they lose air, or keep them in until I take them to the garage? Keep them in until you take it to the garage. You might find that it's the end of the tire. If you have a bunch of quills and there's a bunch of holes, it's really not generally worth fixing. You'd want to replace the tire. If you pull the quills out now, the tire will probably go flat. So yeah, leave them in, don't drive fast, and you'll probably find you need a new tire. I've never heard of anybody running over a porcupine before and having the barb stick in. I guess they are hard enough to go right through the rubber and then make it flat. But leave them in until you get there, and then you'll probably find if there's a bunch of them, you don't want to fix multiple holes. You would just go buy another tire. I doubt if insurance is going to cover porcupine damage, though. Time Belt Travis says, I want to reduce the cabin noise of my Toyota Corolla. One guy said you could put narrow tires and smaller rims to help with it, but I don't know. What do you think? It's more the type of tire than the size. Aggressive tread ones like all-season winter summer tires, they're going to make more noise because they have aggressive treads, so they have more friction and make more noise. You would want the quietest summer tire you could put on a thing. That will make quite a bit less noise. Talking about cabin noise, I just made a video on it. You are much better insulating the car. They make insulation kits. There's tons of companies that make them and sell them. You take the seats out, then you insulate under them. You can take the door panels out and you insulate inside them, or you can pay somebody to insulate it. That's what the difference is between an expensive luxury car and a cheaper car. A lot of it is the expensive luxury cars have a lot of insulation when they build them. The cheap ones do not. Take a Toyota Prius. They're pretty loud. They don't want to put a bunch of insulation in because it weighs and will get worse gas mileage. Not that much, but they're fanatics with Priuses. So if you had a Prius, you could make it pretty quiet by insulating the whole thing. You'd lose a tiny amount of gas mileage. Like, I don't know, maybe 1/20th of a mile a gallon or less than that probably by the added weight. But you put in insulation, you get a much quieter car. It's not rocket science. It's just taking parts out and putting the insulation. There's a zillion videos showing you how to do it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.